Lesson 1, how to create yourself. When I was 17 years old, I was one of the highest ranked World of Warcraft players in North America. I played a mage, by the way. And my whole dream was I wanted to go to tournaments and I wanted to compete and I wanted to live the lifestyle of a pro gamer. There was nothing more exciting to me than the thought of getting up on stage with my team and competing against the best players in the world. But what ultimately happened instead is I didn't become a pro gamer. Instead, I was more of an entertainer. So the things that I would write about on my blog, it was more focused around high-tier gameplay or strategies or how to beat certain compositions. A good lesson, I guess, is that I didn't provide enough value in that segment for people to see me as the thought leader. I provided good value, but my blog didn't really take off when I focused on that sort of content. As soon as I started changing my content and writing more funny stories or entertaining stories, I was essentially making fun and creating this character where at school I was, very awkward and shy and didn't have many friends, and that was true, but then in the World of Warcraft I was famous, right? And so this duality created a lot of really funny situations for me and gave me a lot of room to play and make up stories and create myself into a character. As soon as I did that, my blog readership skyrocketed. People liked the character that I was creating for myself. They liked the voice. They liked what I was doing from a writing perspective, and they came back day after day because they were entertained. I didn't understand it at the time, but looking back now, I realized what I was doing. And when you create yourself consciously, whatever you want that to be, you now have the ability to create an audience. You have more control over how people perceive you or the things that people get when they come to your channel or your blog. When you start to create yourself, you now give yourself more creative freedom. You can attract an audience very deliberately. So you know that if you create certain types of content or have certain aspects of your personality come through, you already know the types of people that you're going to attract. And the more conscious you are of that, the more that you can deliberately build the following that you want. Gaming as an industry and gamers in themselves inherently do this better than a lot of other people. Because when you play a video game, you see yourself at a distance, especially third-person games, you have a clearer image of the characters who you're creating, and you're not getting so wrapped up in your head about how will people perceive me. It's kind of a cool exercise actually, because you can see yourself at a distance. It's almost like your character is the you that you're deliberately creating. So you can highlight certain aspects of your personality, you can bring out certain things, you can make certain things up. It's up to you then to create yourself into whoever you want to be. That's the imagination aspect, and that's the creative freedom that you have. But the thing that you have to be conscious of, and this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, is if you create this persona that is so drastically different than who you really are, then what happens is you build a following around something that isn't really you. And at some point, there's going to be this disconnect where you feel like you have to keep being something else other than who you really are. That's where it's a lot better to ask yourself these important questions, which we're going to go through, and figure out, what do you love to do? What value can you provide people? And then what are the aspects of you already that just need to be turned up a little bit in order to build an audience? It's a lot better in the long run to do it that way rather than trying to create a shock value sort of personality that attracts attention at first, and then you have to stick with that in order to keep your audience. That was something that I did as a teenager. My blog was the shock value personality, and I gained a lot of attention because I started drama and I knew how to poke gamers and get people to argue with each other. And it was great for a short period of time, but then after about a year or two, I realized that that wasn't really the persona that was me. I had created something that was different. Hard lesson, but now looking back, very valuable, because if you don't consciously create yourself to be a flexible moving object, then what happens is that down the road, you've created something that isn't sustainable. You no longer want to be, that person. So that's the process that we're going to go through, is actually leading you through how to find that intersection between what it is that you love and the value that you can provide, and create something that's going to be sustainable over a long period of time and flexible enough to where you can change over the years and your audience grows with you. Instead of looking for short-term tactics where you think, oh, if I create this one video or I write this one blog post, I'm going to go viral and attract a lot of attention. That does not work. And if it does work, it's very short-lived. I'm more interested in creating things that are going to have a longer tail end, because even though it takes a little bit longer in the beginning, it's something that you can ultimately grow with over the years, and it becomes you. It becomes your personal brand. So in lesson 2, we're going to walk through the specifics of, if you want to build a personal brand, what are all the different elements that you need to balance in order to create that? You've got your voice, you've got the content that you create. It even comes down to, what do you look like, or what are the things that you wear, what are the things that you like? Any of those that you reveal to your audience creates an image in their mind of who you are. And the more aware that you are of that process, the more that you can deliberately create yourself to attract the audience that you want. Lesson 2, what makes a personal brand personal? If you think about yourself as a character, right? Use this as an imagination exercise. You have all these different elements, just like you would when you're choosing a character and you have all the different bars, right? Your speed, agility, defense. Think of all the different aspects of your personality. You have your voice, you have the way that you sound, you have the things that you like, the jokes that you make, the words that you use. All of these things create your personality and the way that people perceive you. So if you make videos or you write blogs and it's you screaming or it's you laughing like a hyena with friends, that creates the way that people perceive you. And that's not bad. It's just something that you need to be aware of, because if you can take those elements and you see that people are receptive to them, or it makes them laugh, or that that's what they love about you, maybe they see a sense of vulnerability, or they feel like they know you, that you're real. It's really important that you try and pinpoint each of the little things that creates an image in the mind of the viewer or the reader. And once you start to be aware of all those different things that resonate with people, you now have to consciously choose what aspects do you keep and what aspects do you turn down. If you try and be everything to everyone, you ultimately won't create some sort of defined character. It's like if you're playing a video game. Most people don't pick the I'm kinda good at everything. They want to go with a character that has a specific skill set that really vibes with their play style. Maybe they want a very aggressive character, or a very defensive character, or a character that's very fast, or a character that's very slow, depending on how they like to play the game. Personal branding and the internet and social media is a game. And so you need to be aware that you yourself are the character, and you can create yourself to be whoever you want. The more consciously that you create yourself, the more that you can become and attract the audience that you're looking for. And you have a clearer sense of what it is that they like, what it is that they want, and how you can deliver that value to them. So let's go through some of the different aspects of personal branding. A big one is your voice. Gamers in particular are very loud. The community is very loud. Everyone has an opinion. It can be rough It's not the easiest industry, but what it also has is a lot of self-expression and creativity. And the way that you communicate and use your voice, that's what attracts your audience. So maybe you're a gamer with a very professional image. You like to make tutorial videos, you like to stay very formal, you like to walk people through the basics of a game, and they know that when they come to you, it's not really about entertainment, they're coming to you purely for knowledge. That's great. You know yourself and you know your audience. That's the fit that we're looking for. Other times, you're the entertainer. You're creating videos or writing blogs, or maybe on your live stream, you're doing things that are going to make people laugh or attract attention in a way where they know what they're going to get when they come to your channel. That's the key. It doesn't really matter where you fall on the spectrum and whatever it is that you do. What matters is that people know what they're going to get when they go to your channel. If you can solve for that problem, you have a significant advantage over a lot of other people. The biggest reason why people don't follow people on social media or follow and subscribe to someone's channel is because they don't really know what they're gonna get. They go to the channel and go, okay, you post some videos, you talk about A to Z, but I don't really know what I'm gonna get. Why would I follow you every single day? That's your job consciously when you create yourself as a character and as a personal brand to figure out what is it that I'm gonna give and focus on. And if it's professional content and tutorials, or if it's humor related, or if it's maybe covering the industry like a journalist, or maybe you're starting drama and you wanna be like the Perez Hilton of the industry, that's fine too. What matters is that you're conscious of it and you're doing it deliberately. So typically there are three types of content makers, right? You have a content creator where you're the one who's actually creating the content of value for the niche. So this would be a YouTuber that makes videos or a blogger that writes articles, for example. You're creating something original and people come to you because you are the source. You're the one that's actually creating it. Another type is maybe you're the journalist. You're instead the third-person view of your niche or industry. So you're the one who's writing about, say, pro gaming events, or writing about what's going on with the top-tier players. You're the one who's writing about it and covering it from a third-person perspective. The third type of influencer is what's called a curator. So you're not the one who's actually creating the content, and you're not the one who's really covering the industry from a journalistic perspective. You're the one who's gathering all the best content, and you're seen as the resource for here's all the best content in this niche. So a great example of this is the Instagram pages, where they're not the ones necessarily creating all of the funny memes, but they're the ones going around and finding all the best ones and then posting it on their channel. And you follow them because they're the ones curating all of the best content being created out there. So the three types of influencers are the content creator. You're the one who's actually creating the content, something original. The journalist, who's covering the industry or the market from a third-person perspective. Or you're the curator. You're looking for all of the best content and you're saying, I am the primary resource. Come to me and I will tell you all of the best stuff going on. All three of these are very different skill sets, and you have to figure out which one you are. If you want to be creating YouTube videos every day, and you can do that, you're a content creator. If you want to be finding all the best YouTube videos in your niche, and people come to you for you're the feed of what's hot, you're the content curator. And if you're the journalist, you're covering the industry from that third-person perspective. You're the one that's almost like the news source. Once you have a clear idea of that, you now understand your audience. You know what they're looking for, you know what they want delivered, and you can make that promise of, if you follow me, this is what you're gonna get. If you're a content creator, you're gonna get original content 5-7 days out of the week. If you're the journalist, you come to my site, I'm gonna tell you everything that's going on within League of Legends, or everything that's going on within World of Warcraft, or Counter-Strike, or Halo. And if you're a content curator, you say, you're coming to me and I'm gonna find all of the best stuff going on. And you can even refine that and say, I'm gonna give you all of the best PvP videos, or I'm gonna give you all of the best montages. Whatever it is, you have a very clear focus, and it can expand or contract based on how much bandwidth you have, how much time you want to spend on it, what sort of brand you want to build for yourself. But what's important is that you're conscious of that. Because once you're conscious of it, you can now more deliberately create it in the first place. So now let's talk about attracting an audience. If you want to attract a certain type of person, it's important that you lay out who that person is. What do they look like? What are the things that they like? How do they speak? Who are their friends? Where do they all hang out? Those questions lead you to the source. They tell you if they're on YouTube and they're scrolling for videos, or if they're on Instagram and they're looking at pictures. It tells you where the audience is and how they consume content and what it is they're looking for. If you can start to refine that image of the person, you now have a clearer goal that you can aim towards, instead of just saying, I'm going to create content and we'll see what happens. That's great in theory, but it doesn't really move you or move the needle to where you want to be. So let's pick apart the audience and walk through how you can figure out who that person is, where they are, and what you should create in order to attract them. Lesson 3, who is your audience? So when you start to ask yourself who your audience is, you should have in your mind sort of this blank image of a person. You want to ask yourself, who are they? If you saw them at your school or your job or your town or your community, how would you interact with them? What are the things that they like? What are the things that they don't like? What gets them excited and what pisses them off? You want to answer these questions so that you know, if I create this, I'm probably going to attract them. And if I create this, I'm probably going to repel them. Again, the more conscious that you are of this, the faster you will ultimately move and build an audience of value. The key to building an audience and understanding who your audience is really comes down to one thing. What are their pain points? What are the things that they're struggling with or that they want answers to? And how can you provide that in the best way possible? Again, going back, this is what I learned through a platform called Quora. When you think about what questions people are asking, you now know what you need to create in order to answer them or to attract them in the first place. So for example, if you're a very experienced gamer and you ask yourself, what content should I create? If you're just staring at a blank wall, then you don't really have anything to aim for. You can create some gameplay videos, you can do some montages, you can do some funny stuff, but ultimately you're not really doing it deliberately. And the key is figuring out how you can do it deliberately and measure it so that you know if it's working or not. On the flip side, if you're a very experienced gamer and you put yourself in the shoes of a beginner gamer, or think back to how things were when you were first starting, you have a better sense of what questions they might ask and what you can create to answer those questions. And if you can't come up with it, then I suggest reaching out to the gaming community or reaching out to people that are starting out or starting to dip their toe into becoming a YouTube entertainer or trying to be a pro gamer, because they're gonna have a very clear image as to what it is they need help with. It'll be like a waterfall and they'll say, well, I have all of these questions. And all of a sudden, you know, if you're answering those questions, you're providing them a lot of value. The key is focusing on those pain points. As soon as you can get a clear sense of the questions people are asking in response to the audience you want to attract, then you yourself know what you can create that will answer those questions. Once you have that relationship going on, it's no longer this game of, I'm just gonna create lots of stuff and see what works. That's okay, maybe in the beginning and trying to get a bearing for who your audience is, but over time, it should then become a question of how can you deliver the most value? So a very easy way to think about this is you go, if I'm a YouTuber, I know that people come to me for videos. So now you have a measure for maybe your videos are very low quality or your videos are very high quality based on cameras that you're using or people that you're collaborating with. That's one measure of value. Another measure that has nothing to do with equipment is the content itself. This is why phone videos go viral, because they're capturing something that is of so much value that the quality that it was recorded in doesn't really matter. So you need to understand how you're choosing to measure your own success and then focusing your attention there. Another important part of understanding your audience is knowing where they are in the first place. If your audience is looking for a specific type of content or attracted to a certain type of influencer, you need to ask where they're already frequenting or spending their time. So are they on YouTube? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Facebook? Are they reading blogs? All of these questions ultimately guide you to being where they already are. That's the key. Is it's a lot harder to say, I'm on this channel that you aren't using, come find me, rather than it is to go to where they already spend their time and then you saying, I'm there too. So for example, this is something that I run into working with brands, is that they think, we need to be on Snapchat, or we need to be on Instagram, or whatever the new hot platform is, without asking, is that where their audience is? If it is, great, that's a good investment. If it's not, it's a waste of time. There's no sense in spending time somewhere that the people you want to attract aren't there. So this opens up a bigger question, which is, if you want to take something that you love and build a career around it, or do it professionally in whatever sense that means to you, then you need to ask yourself, what do I need to do in order to make that happen? Your primary resource is time. So if you have all the time in the world, then you can put yourself on as many platforms as you want, see which ones are working, see which ones aren't, change that way. But if you're working a full-time job, or if you're at school, or if you don't have a lot of time, then you need to take the 1 or 2 hours a day that you have and be very conscious of how you invest it. If you only have an hour a day to work on you as a personal brand, you need to ask, is that best spent creating a YouTube video? Should I be responding to other pages on Facebook and trying to build my own Facebook following? Should I just do stories on Snapchat? Which one is going to give me an investment return based on the time that I put in? If you can start to think about it that way, you break down your time each day and go, I'm going to invest it into this platform or these 2 platforms. And every week I'm going to gauge how people respond to me, and then I'm going to shift and grow over time. If you're not extremely aware of your time, then you're just throwing paint at the wall. You're doing a YouTube video here, a YouTube video there, and you don't really know if your consistency is working or not. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but you need to understand that the key to succeeding in building a personal brand and doing what you love over the long term is being consistent. And if you don't allocate time each day to doing that, where your audience is, with a specific focus in mind of the content that you're going to create, then you're not going to move from doing it as a hobby to doing it professionally. You have to be aware of your time. Lesson 4, owning your platform. Once you have a clear sense of your audience and what platforms they're using, and you pick 1 or 2 platforms to really focus on, it's then your goal to become the best content creator or journalist or curator on that platform. You want to be seen as a thought leader for 2 reasons. One is that if you're creating the best type of content for that platform, then obviously in some sense you're going to dominate your niche. That's the goal, right? But the other reason why it's really valuable is that you forget that you're using tools that everybody ultimately wants to be really good at. If you're a great YouTuber, it honestly doesn't matter if you're a gamer or you're an entrepreneur or you're a business owner or you're talking about, blenders, because that's your brand. What matters is that you know how to use YouTube really well. And if you know how to use a social platform, which is a tool, really well, then you have a value that not many other people have. So then it becomes a really easy segue from maybe you want to do gaming for X amount of years, but then you want to transition and go, all right, I'm no longer a thought leader in gaming. I'm now a thought leader in building social audiences, or I'm a thought leader in how to use social media to gain a following. That's something that essentially I do now. Is I started as a gamer, and then I transitioned into the larger idea of how do you use these tools to build yourself into a personal brand. When you have knowledge of how the tools work, then you can provide value to people inside your industry and also outside your industry. People forget that this is a revenue stream in itself. If you're a really good YouTuber, then you can teach other YouTubers how to do what you've done, and you can also do it outside of your industry. So it's no longer just about gaming, it's about everyone. Because again, it doesn't matter if you're a business or an entrepreneur or a speaker or an author or a gamer, you're still using the same fundamental tools. A lot of times the rules stay the same and they continue to apply regardless of what the industry is. So it's all about owning your platform. So in order to do that, you have to get extremely tactical with what you do. You have to understand A to Z everything from what are the basics of uploading a video to YouTube or posting a really great Instagram photo to how do you create content that attracts a lot of attention. And if you do it for long enough, you ultimately create your own sort of recipe. You know, if I create these types of videos, they're going to do really well. And if I do these types of videos, well, my audience might enjoy them, but they're not going to go big. That's okay. What's important is that you're measuring it and you're understanding what types of content do well, what types don't, and also being aware of what your audience is, because what works really well for you might not work really well for someone else based on the audience. So again, you always want to have perspective on both sides. It within gaming, and then also in general, how is it going to work for other people? And if you can be aware of both, you can own your platform better, because it's not then just you competing against gamers, it's you competing against everyone. Of all of the videos on YouTube, how is your audience or larger audiences going to stumble across yours? So think of your competition and think about how much you need to understand your platform in order to win. That is the goal. At the end of the day, social media is a video game. Whether we think it or not, the personas that we exude and the photos that we post on Facebook and the videos that we create, it creates a perception in the audience and the person watching you. So it's happening already. It's better then that you're conscious of it and aware of it so that you can do it deliberately. In order to own your platform, you have to be very, very tactical. You have to have your larger strategy, and then you have to understand the tactics that get you there. So, for example, your larger strategy might be, these are the types of gamers that I want to attract, this is my goal, the type of audience that I want to build, and I'm going to do so by creating these general content areas and deliver them over a consistent period of time. Okay, overall strategy. But underlying tactics are then a firm understanding of how does the titling of videos work? How do tags work? How does it affect SEO? What things can you do to manipulate the algorithm within whatever platform you're playing? Again, it's a video game, right? So just like a game, you want to learn the ins and outs of how can you move your character in a way within the confines of the game that gives you an advantage. Same thing goes for SEO, same thing goes for ads, same thing goes for any digital platform. Realize that the algorithm itself is a game, and the more that you can play around with it and learn what works, what doesn't, then you're going to have an advantage over other people. The other interesting thing is that it's just like a patch, right? When a game comes out with a new patch, then the game changes, and suddenly the strategies that people were using before are now different. They don't apply anymore. So it's up to you to pivot and learn and always stay ahead of the curve so that, again, you're not just owning your platform for your own sake, but then you can also take that information and share it with other people. That's even more value that you can provide. So what I suggest is taking all the things that you know about your platform and writing them down and mapping out your strategy and mapping out the tactics that ladder up to that strategy, and then finding ways to use it over time and change it and manipulate it so that you can do better. Look at the things that are working, look at the things that aren't working. I was working with a YouTuber, for example, who all of a sudden he put the word "the" in front of all of his titles. So instead of, World of Warcraft montage, he put the World of Warcraft montage. And for whatever reason, that word picked up inside YouTube's algorithm and ranked his videos higher. All of a sudden he saw a spike in his viewership, and that one little shift gave him a competitive advantage. It's very granular, it's very nerdy, but it also is what is going to make you better than other people. So if you want to win the game, you have to find all the little things that you can manipulate to keep attention on you and the content that you're creating instead of your competition. And when you think about it that way, it starts to get really fun. So next we're going to talk about competition, looking at all the different people in your niche or market that you're competing against. You want to keep your finger on the pulse and look at what they're doing just as much as you take time to create things yourself. If you keep an eye on the things that they're doing to attract attention, it's going to give you better insight as to where you need to move next. Lesson 5, who is your competition? When you think about your competition, you want to ask yourself who they are, where they are, and what it is they're creating. If you don't keep a tab on the people that you're competing against in terms of content creation or content curation, then they're going to do things that start working and you're not going to be aware of them. It's a lot harder to grow and learn on your own than it is to grow and learn while watching and learning from other people. So I suggest whatever it is that you're doing, if you're a YouTuber, if you're a Twitch streamer, if you're an Instagrammer, go to the platform, find all of the people that are doing what you want to do really well, and then write them all down. Keep tabs on them. Check on their pages every week or every 2 weeks. Scroll through the content that they're posting. Question why some of their content performed really well. Like YouTube, you can see the views and the comments. And then also look at the content that didn't perform really well and ask yourself, why didn't it? It's a blend of both. It's the content itself, and then it's also their audience. Maybe the content that they made didn't really vibe with their audience, and maybe it might work really well for your audience. That's something that then you can take, reinvent, and then put out again. Another great thing in terms of looking at your competition is the fact that it's an endless source of inspiration. So if you're looking at the types of videos that someone else is making, for example, then it's going to give you ideas of videos that you can create too. If you're not looking at your competition, again, it goes back to that you're just staring at a whiteboard and you're trying to figure out, what do I create? But oftentimes, people do this inherently, is they find something that someone else created and then they put their spin on it, or they make a response video to it, or they in some way engage with it that fits their brand and their audience. It's really important that you keep an eye on your competition because they're the ones that are attracting the same attention that you want to attract for yourself. At the end of the day, it's a race for who can keep the audience's attention. And the audience is everyone in your market or your niche. So the better you are at creating content, the more people are going to pay attention to you. If you're not creating great content, their attention is going to go somewhere else. So what you're really doing is competing against other influencers or YouTubers or Twitch streamers or gamers for your market's attention. That's what it is. You want people to pay attention to you and the content that you're making instead of someone else. When you think about it in terms of competition, it's healthy competition. You're all trying to provide the most amount of value. Someone's trying to be funnier than the next person. Someone's trying to teach people better than the next person. So if you look at what other people in your niche are doing, it gives you a very clear barometer as to what you need to do in order to surpass them or to attract their audience over to you. So if they're making funny videos, for example, you need to break them down and ask, why are they funny to their audience, or why are they attracting attention? And then how can you do something that is either similar or better or a spin-off where their audience will find their way to you? Same thing with providing value in terms of knowledge or professionalism or answering people's questions or tutorials. It's all the same fundamental lesson. It's the fact that you want to provide so much value that all of the audiences that are following your competition eventually go to you. And ideally, there's the people that rule the industry, and then there's all of the people that want to rule the industry. And those people at the top, those are the true influencers, and that's where you want to be. Those are the ones with the 10 million followers, or even smaller. You can have smaller influencers, where even if you just have 10,000 followers or 50,000, it's that many people paying attention to you. And then what you choose to do with that audience is up to you. So when it comes to analyzing your competition, one thing that I suggest is going through their pages and being very deliberate by how you organize and measure the content that they're putting out. You might think that it's not deliberate, but even if it's subconscious, in some sense it is still deliberate, because they're putting things out that they know from some part of them that their audience wants to see. Over time, everyone sort of finds their flow. They know what videos are going to resonate. They know what content they put out is going to get positive engagement or negative engagement. Maybe that's what they want, and they start drama, and that's the audience that they build. But either way, they know what they're putting out is going to attract something back, and that's really important. What you need to do is break that down and look at all of the things that they're creating and then question, why were they working in the first place? And then see if any of those ideas can work for your brand. So maybe one person puts out a lot of videos or content that is just overarching statements like 10 things that all gamers need to know, or 10 things blah, blah, blah. You might take that form and go, okay, lists work really well. I'm going to start putting out some content broken down into lists. And then if your audience responds well, you now have a bucket or something that you can replicate over time that's a category that you can use for your own brand. Instead of thinking about content in terms of individual videos or individual pieces, you want to think about what is the long-term play? What is the bucket or the category that I can create for myself where I can replicate it over and over again? So, for example, maybe your content bucket is interviews. So every week you're going to interview another top player. Okay, you have that category where you know you've got plenty of top players that you can interview for a very long time, and people can consistently come back to you over and over again knowing I'm going to get an interview from you. That's the real value. If you don't have that, again, what you're doing is you're just throwing out individual pieces of content hoping that something attracts back to you. It's not that sustainable, and you're going to run out of ideas. It's far better to create categories that you can replicate over time. And then what it also does is it sets the expectation in the mind of the audience member as to what they're going to get from you. Remember, we talked about how valuable that is. If they know what they're going to get, they're going to come back day after day after day. It's the same reason why television works the way that it does. If you say that a show is every week at 3 p.m. Central, the audience knows at 3 p.m. Central, I'm going to show up because they know what they're going to get at that time. You want to take that same idea and apply it to content. Every Monday, you're going to put out this video. Every Tuesday, you're going to put out this piece of content. And it creates that rhythm and habit with your audience where they then are part of your schedule. And as they go about their lives, they know that you're providing value to them and you become part of their daily routine. If you can create that, that is tremendous value. So again, going back to this idea of how do you measure success for yourself, especially in regards to your competition, you have to break down value into different categories. So one easy way that people judge value, right, is the professionalism of the content. If you see someone with super high quality video, inherently it's implied that they have access to resources that mean that they're in some way successful, right? So you take that value, and as an audience member, you believe in that. That's why people invest in high quality equipment. At the same time, another way that you value quality is the type of content itself. That's where it doesn't really matter if you're recording it on a cell phone or you're recording it with a $5,000 camera. Your judge of quality becomes the content and what it is that you're sharing. And then it's more of a competition of you're talking about things in a way that is better than other people in that specific niche. So however you choose to judge success, either way, it's okay as long as you're aware of what it is you're judging success against. If you're comparing the quality of your content against high-end cameras, then it's like apples to oranges. You have to think about comparing yourself to competition that is in line with the thing that you're comparing in the first place. A couple things that you can do to increase your value. Obviously, one being upgrading your equipment. If you're shooting things that are more professional, then it's inherently going to come with this level of you've already made it. And people are attracted to that. It's the same reason why some kid goes and rents a Lamborghini and then puts it in the background of his shot, hires a couple models and goes, check it out, I've made it, follow me. I'm not saying that you should go do that. I'm just saying that it's a strategy that works. So one way that you can increase your value is to increase the quality of your content purely from a production standpoint, whether that's high-end photography or high-end video, or maybe the sound, the mic that you use when you live stream, that's increasing your value. Another thing that adds value are the people that you surround yourself with. So for example, if you start to associate yourself with other big influencers in your industry, people are going to associate you with those people. Another big one is location. Where you're choosing to create your content also gives you credibility in some sense. So if you go out and travel in itself implies some level of success or some level of professionalism because not everyone has access to it. That's a really important thing to be aware of, is how you can use your surroundings and other people as collaborators to increase the value of what it is that you're putting out and sharing with people. But the thing that's ultimately more important than all of that is your voice. Your voice, I believe, to be your primary instrument. And how you use your voice and the elements that you turn up and you turn down, that's what really attracts a loyal following and builds an audience. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you're making YouTube videos in your mom's basement or if you're bringing a GoPro to the top of a mountain and shooting there. Either way, people are only going to listen to you and believe in what you're saying if you are speaking from the heart. If you're speaking from a place that is meaningful and has intention and you're sharing things of value, that is what is really going to resonate with people. So again, be aware of all of the other things that create your personal brand and give it different colors and shadings and attributes and qualities that give people an image of who you are. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your voice and the things that you're choosing to share with people. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to discover your voice, how to refine your voice, and then the things that you can do to get your voice heard. Lesson 6, finding your voice. As I mentioned in the last lesson, your voice is the clearest reflection of who you are, more so than where you're shooting your content or the content that you're producing in itself. the more important aspect is the voice that you're using to create it and the part of you that's creating it. So there's a very clear difference between creating something from your head, which is, I think that people are going to like this, and it's all very up here, versus I genuinely want to express myself and share this, and it's coming from here. And that clear difference is what creates a different level of engagement with people. It's the same reason why maybe a gamer does a YouTube video on depression, for example, and it resonates. And it resonates because they're creating it from a very genuine part of themselves. Again, going back to your type of brand, it's a constant balance between understanding your audience and that external perception, and then also having a clear understanding of who you are and what you genuinely want to express and share. And in balancing those two, that's where you're going to create your best content. And what I've learned is that there are two elements to finding your voice. There's the tactical side, which is how it works, what it is that you're creating, whether you're sarcastic or whether you're funny or whether you're just professional and knowledgeable. And then the other side is that where it comes from in you is the more important element. You can have a really great voice tactically, but if you're not creating from a genuine part of yourself, then it's always going to lack a depth. So you have to think of your voice as a range, and the top half is the tactical side, and the bottom half is the depth side. And you want to have a balance of both. You want to understand what content your audience is looking for. You want to understand how you can communicate it in a way that they're going to respond well to, but then also being aware of where is it in you that you create the best content. And if you can pinpoint that and speak from a place of genuine confidence, then your content is always going to have a layer of depth that other people who are more focused on the external, they're not going to have that. And that's what sets you apart. And if you notice and you study all of the people that create really, really great content, the influencers in any market, regardless of what they're creating, they all share the same fundamental blend between knowing what their audience wants and also creating it from a place of genuine confidence. And I know that's hard to see, especially when you see pieces of content like drama is very difficult to see this in, right? The Kardashians, because you look at things that create a lot of drama and it's easy to assume that it's just there's not a lot of depth there. And it's true in some sense that the depth of the content isn't there because it's very surface level. But at the same time, the only way that you can create content to that quality is it has to be coming from some genuine place. So even if you're creating something that on the surface appears to be just that, you have to still embody it. And it takes some level of confidence in you to be able to create that in the first place. So instead of focusing on how to create content like that, pull back instead and ask yourself what it is that you genuinely want to share with people and find that depth. And then when you can pinpoint what that is, when you share that, it is going to be a little scary and it is going to be vulnerable in some sense, but it is also going to create a more genuine relationship with your viewers and the people that follow you. When it comes down to creating your voice, one issue that a lot of people run into, and it's a roadblock, is that they try and figure out who they are sitting at a table before they take the first step. So they want to sit there and create who they're going to be without doing any sort of experimentation. And really, it's the complete opposite of that. In order to discover your voice and who you are, you need to do things and learn along the way. You're not going to figure it out by just sitting at a desk and saying, these are all the things that I'm going to be, and as soon as I start, all of those things are going to fall into place. Instead, it's more of a process of learning as you go. So again, going back to Quora, this is what I learned in answering questions for people. By answering other people's questions, I myself found my own voice because I learned how to communicate answers to people's questions. And I learned what they were looking for and the way that they were looking for it and how to convey it in a way that would both attract attention and solve a problem. So that's how I found my voice. How you would find your voice is by creating content deliberately and then learning as you go based on the feedback that you get. And it's a lot harder to do that in a space where you're not getting feedback rather than doing it socially or online where you can get constant feedback. That's part of the reason why if someone asks, should I start a blog? I actually say that the blog is the last step. The first step is picking a social platform and putting out content deliberately and consistently so that you can get feedback and learn as you go. And at some point, it's a curve. You're gonna put out a lot of content, no one's gonna pay attention, and then all of a sudden it's gonna flip and you're gonna have found some element of your voice that resonates with people and you're gonna see a spike. And then once you see that, you take it in, you reflect on it, you ask why that worked, and you add it to your arsenal, your tool belt. And then you keep creating content, maybe you find another element of your personality that works, and you do the same thing. You reflect on it, you add it to your tool belt. And over time, you learn all of the different elements of your voice and who you are that resonates with people, until eventually you have 5, 10, 15 different categories of things that you can talk about and you can share with people over time consistently that are gonna resonate. And the more of those that you can find about yourself, two things happen. One is you're attracting attention consistently in a way where people know what they can get from you, and at the same time, you are also creating content that is true to who you are, and that's gonna make you happy. So in order to find that blend, you can't sit at the beginning and just say, I'm gonna be this person, and then I'm gonna have it all figured out, and the first video that I make, it's gonna be perfect. It's the complete opposite of that. You need to pick a platform, start experimenting, see what works, see what people react to. And in gaming, it's a tough community. You're gonna have a lot of people negatively comment on your stuff, and that's okay. You have to remember that it's feedback. And don't listen to all of it, just take it in, ask why they responded that way, reflect on it, and then make a conscious decision as to whether you want to keep creating content like that or if you want to pivot. And as you go and as you start to build momentum, you will refine and ultimately find your voice. The last point I want to touch on with the voice is that it can change. It should be flexible based on where your audience is and where you're choosing to communicate yourself. So for example, if you're creating content for your inner circle of gamers, you can use language that they can relate to and that they understand. You can use gaming slang, or you can use words and terms from the games that you play that they already understand. But if you go and say talk about gaming and influence on a podcast where the audience is much larger, your voice changes in a sense because you're aware of the fact that there are people that don't have that same level of insider knowledge, and that's good. You're aware that your audience has changed and you can shift your voice slightly to match that and to communicate to them effectively. The key is understanding what platform you're using at the time, who the audience is, and then how you can maintain the core of your voice, but shift it slightly so that it makes sense for that platform. So for example, the difference between Twitter and YouTube, if you're posting a tweet, you only have 140 characters, so you have to be very short, very deliberate, and still maintain the core of what your voice is. If you're making a YouTube video, especially if it's a longer video, you can take the scenic route. You can talk about things in a more roundabout way where you can add more color and depth to whatever it is you're saying. It's important that you change the voice slightly based on the platform that you're using and understand that people consume content differently on different platforms. So on Snapchat, I've found that it's much better to do concise, short stories rather than you're going to tell a very long story over the period of 12, 15 snaps in a row. You can do it, and there are ways where it works well, but most of the time it's much better to create content that can be easily consumed and quickly. The same goes for YouTube. Being aware of what types of long videos work and what types of short videos work. And then what is it about those two voices and how do they interact with people and tell the narrative and the story differently. And so whenever you start creating content in these different platforms, you're very aware of how these elements of your voice are going to stay the same, and then these surrounding elements of your voice are going to change based on wherever you're telling your story. This is something that not very many people keep in mind. They try and tell the same story across every platform. It's true, you are going to tell at the heart the same story, your story, but the way that you tell it is going to be different, and it should be different, because what works on one platform is not going to work on the other. And even though the core of the story is going to change, you have to change the way that it's communicated, because people communicate differently on different platforms. So the reason why it's important to be aware of your voice is because you could have a really great story, but if you're not communicating it in the way that people are used to consuming that sort of content on that platform, they're going to miss it. It's a dual-pronged problem. You need to be aware of the story itself, your unique value, and what you're trying to provide people, and at the same time being aware of how they're going to consume that content on that platform. The people that are really good at building influence know how to balance both of these. They understand what their story is, and they also understand how that story can be told in different ways on different platforms. If you notice though, it's pretty apparent if you find someone that puts out a lot of content, but they're lacking one or the other. Maybe they're really great at using the platform, but they don't have a clear sense of their story or what it is that they want to provide people. At the same time, there are people that have a very firm grasp of their story, but they just can't figure out how to use the platform in a way that benefits them and easily communicates their story to their audience. So it's extremely important that you understand both and that you keep an eye on the strategy and who it is that you are and the value that you want to provide, and also the tactics, the way that you're going to provide it. And if you can mesh both of those together, that is the intersection where you understand your voice. Your voice is the combination of what you genuinely want to express, your creative expression, and also the awareness of how you're going to be perceived and how you can do so in a way that attracts attention. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about loyalty. Is how you build a loyal following over time. When building a loyal following, it's very important to be consistent. And that's what we're going to talk about, is that it's not about just putting out 1 or 2 pieces of content and then hoping to go viral or hoping to attract a ton of attention out of nowhere. And instead, you want to think about the long game. Is what is it that you really want to build 4, 5, 10 years from now? And what are the little things that you can do now to set yourself up and give you a foundation for those big ideas? Lesson 7, how to build true loyalty. Building loyalty is something that is very difficult to do, and it's why brands are willing to pay so much for access to people like you. They want to pay influencers because influencers have access to the audience that they want. It's all about attention. If you have people's attention, that is something that is very valuable, and you need to understand that. Your value is the fact that people are paying attention to you. And that's because everyone is competing for attention. Television shows are competing for the same level of attention as YouTube channels. Either way, someone is going to spend an hour watching content, and whether that content is on TV or whether it's on YouTube, it's the same attention, and people want access to that. In order to build loyalty, you have to realize that your competition is not just within gaming. It's not just against other gamers or people that watch gaming content. You have to attract attention from people, period. And it's the fact that they can choose whether they're consuming your content or they're gonna go and consume content elsewhere. And maybe it's not even gaming related. So then the competition becomes a matter of, are they gonna watch your YouTube video about gaming, or are they gonna go watch a Netflix video? Either way, they're going to spend their hour doing something. And so it's not just about competing against other gamers and other influencers in your niche, as much as it is figuring out how you're going to attract attention and maintain that attention over a long period of time. In order to build true loyalty, it comes down to 2 very simple things. The first is you have to be consistent. If you post for a few weeks and then you don't post for a few weeks, you're never going to build the momentum that you're looking for. But if you're consistent over a long period of time, and by long, I mean years, then that's when your audience starts to see you as part of their daily life. And that's what you want. You want your content to be so familiar to them that they associate every morning's breakfast and their cup of coffee with your YouTube channel. That's the goal. If every morning they wake up and they go, I'm gonna have my breakfast, I'm gonna have my cup of coffee, and I'm going to watch your YouTube channel, you've won, because you are now part of their daily habit. On the flip side, if you create content for a few weeks and then you fall off and then you post a lot for a month and then you post nothing for 2 months, you're never gonna create the momentum that builds true loyalty. This is the hardest part about being your own media company. That's essentially what it is. Whether you're a content creator or you're a journalist or you're a content curator, either way, you are some sort of media company because people come to you for thought leadership. So what you're doing is you are now becoming the source of content that's being shared. Instead of someone going to someone else's channel or going to even a big brand's channel, they're coming to you. And that's what makes it so powerful and so valuable. And if you can create that level of loyalty within your own audience, that's when the big brands will start coming to you and saying, we will pay you because we want access to what you have, because you've stolen the influence that they used to have, or you've stolen the audience's attention that they used to have. So again, the first element of building true loyalty is you have to be consistent. And this goes back to what I was saying in an earlier lesson about time. You have to be conscious of your time and how much time you're going to invest in building your personal brand. And depending on how much time that you have or how much you want to invest in yourself, that's ultimately going to determine how fast you move. If you only invest an hour a week into making YouTube videos, you're not going to move at the same rate as someone who creates 10 videos a week, right? So that goes to my second point, which is volume. So it's consistency, but it's also volume. You have to put out a lot of content in order to see a return. So you can't just spend a lot of time making one really great video and then expecting that to take care of everything. That one piece of content is going to be great, but it's not going to be the thing that builds true long-term loyalty. You might see a spike, or a lot of people might pay attention to you for it if it's really, really good, but they're going to fall off as quickly as they came on. The thing you have to remember about volume is that it's not just about volume, period. It's about quality volume. It's about putting out top quality content every single day or every other day, or frequently enough to where you can build a loyal following. If you're just putting out content for the sake of putting out content, you're not going to have the same impact as someone that every single time they put out a piece of content, it is their next best piece of content. That's what you're really doing. Yes, you're being aware of all of your competition, you're being aware of your industry, your niche, your market, but ultimately it's a competition against yourself. You want to create today what is better than what you created yesterday. And so as much as we talk about consistency and volume, I'm going to stress the importance of quality volume, because to me, it's much better to take a day off, pull back, and come up with an even better idea for tomorrow, rather than just put out content for the sake of putting out content. That said, there's also a flip side to it where the simple act of being consistent and putting out content and putting out volume is going to help you learn and grow at a faster rate. So one thing that you don't want to fall into is you don't want to say, I'm going to take today off because I want to come up with a better piece of content and then create tomorrow, only for tomorrow to come and then you say, oh, I'm going to take one more day and then come up with something better, because one day turns into 2 and 2 turns into 7, and next thing you know, you're spending a month on one piece of content. That's not what you want to do. A day here and there to brainstorm, totally fine. But volume is very important. And the more times that you put out quality content, the better chance that you have of an audience discovering you and discovering what it is you're about, your story, them sharing it, and that's how you're going to build loyalty over time. So those are the two things that you need to balance when you're creating content and you're building a loyal following, is that you need to be very consistent over a long period of time, and you need to create quality every single time that you put out content. It's volume, but it's quality volume. And you have to do that because otherwise people are going to go to someone else. If you're not always creating the best content, then your audience, even if you've had them for a long time, will eventually go to someone who's creating what you're creating better. Which goes back to what I was saying about time. At some point, you have to decide how committed you are to building your own personal brand. It's a job in itself. People that make YouTube videos full-time, that's their job. So if you're working another job or you're in school or you have other hobbies, you need to decide how seriously you're gonna take it and how much time you're gonna invest in building your own personal brand. The reason why I say that is because that time investment ultimately reflects your consistency and the level of quality volume that you put out. If you're only able to spend an hour on it each day, your quality is going to hit a ceiling. It can only get so good based on the time that you're investing. Again, you have to be very aware of the time that you're willing to spend on yourself and on the things that you're creating and how that's going to ladder up over time. And at some point, because you're essentially working two jobs, if you have a main job and then on the side you create YouTube content or you stream or you post on Instagram, regardless, you're going to need to decide how much more time you can invest in that to make that your primary gig. If you want to take something that you love and make a living off of it, you need to realize that at first you're going to work two jobs. You're going to work the thing that brings in money for you and is your primary career for the time being, and then you're going to spend the other part of your time building something where the investment is going to come later. So a lot of the content creation early on, and it can happen and go on for a long time, is you're still discovering your voice, you're understanding your audience. It takes a long time to figure out who you are, what you want to share, and the value you're going to provide your audience in that specific niche. Once you find that and you start to see over time that it picks up and you are getting traffic and that people are paying attention to you, then there's going to be this crossroads where you can eventually make the leap and go, okay, this is what I was doing primarily to pay my bills, for example, and now I want to do this full time. And once you see that you can make that leap because you're making close to the same amount off of your YouTube content or your personal brand as you are your primary income, then you can decide where you want to spend your time and how you can ultimately allocate more time towards doing what you love. So the next thing we're going to talk about is growth hacking. Is once you have all of those things figured out and you know what it is that you want to share and you've attracted some attention and you've built an audience for yourself, what are the little things that you can do that can increase your growth speed and can make your channel or your personal brand grow faster? Lesson 8, growth hacking. So when we talk about growth hacking, it has a lot to do with what platforms you're using. Going back to what I was saying about understanding how each platform works and getting the tactics and what you can do to manipulate the algorithm so that it works to your benefit. So right now, for example, the Facebook algorithm favors video. And it favors video because Facebook wants to push that. It wants people to spend more money on video ads than regular ads. Knowing that, it would then be very advantageous of you to make videos and put them on Facebook and then promote them because the algorithm inherently is going to favor videos over text or pictures. That's true for right now, but really the idea is that you're always on the cusp of what's changing. Platforms are always going to change, just like a video game changes. When a new patch comes out, there are things about the game that are no longer the same, and it's on each player to adjust and change as they go along. But when we talk about growth hacking, the best growth hack, and it isn't even really a hack, is collaboration. People in your industry that have followings are the best people to collaborate with, obviously. But it's not just about them being your competition, they can also be your primary asset. If you can team up with other people in your niche or your market, even if you're competing for the same attention, you can both grow and build together because you're at the end of the day providing slightly different value. Maybe one person is more focused around tutorial content, the other person is more focused around humor content. You can always find a way to collaborate and to share audiences. The reason why this is so important is because they already have the people that you ultimately want to attract. Where a lot of people get wary about collaborating is that they know that. They don't want their audience to go to you, just like you wouldn't want your audience to go to them. So it's really important when you approach people for collaboration that you pitch it in a way where you realize that they can be a partner and an asset, and you both can help each other grow. It's about trading audiences and having people that are following one person see value in also following another. Sometimes people are going to be open to collaborating and sometimes they're not. What's important is that you find the people that are willing to collaborate and then have them see the value in trading audience with you. A great example of influencers that traded audiences and everyone grew together were the people that started out on Vine. If you remember, there was a group of people, specifically in LA, where they all made humorous Vines, and they were 6-second little clips, and they each would appear in each other's videos. And what happened is that once one of them made it, pretty much all of them made it, because they were constantly collaborating and they were all growing together. And those same influencers now, their network is still together and they've moved to other platforms, mostly Instagram. Some of them create YouTube content, a lot of them post together on Facebook, Snapchat, and they've maintained this sense of let's all work together, trade audiences, and grow as one. You can do the same thing in your niche or wherever that you're creating content. It doesn't really matter if you're a blogger or a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer. The more that you can collaborate with other people, the faster your channel will grow. Another really great growth hack is hopping on social events or current trending events. If you add commentary or play off of things that are happening right now, you're inherently going to be part of a larger conversation that's already there. So a big part of growth has to do with being aware of what's going on around you and inserting yourself into that conversation instead of always trying to just get people to come to you and leave whatever they're paying attention to so that they pay attention to you. It's a lot easier to attract attention that already exists rather than trying to create something from scratch. Another example is going back to understanding where your audience is. You can growth hack by entering into conversations and communities that already have a clearly defined voice, culture, the way that people share that content. Great example of this is the health and fitness community on Instagram. They are very tight-knit and they all share very similar types of content. So instantly, as soon as you start out, even if you only have 1,000 or 2,000 followers, you can tap into those other influencers that are smaller and start building your reach that way. And then what you do is you climb the ladder as you go. So when you first start out, you collaborate with tier 1 influencers, tier 1 being the bottom here. And then as you grow maybe to 5,000 or 10,000 followers, you start collaborating with the people around that same tier until eventually you climb your way up the ladder where you're collaborating with the best of the best. That's what you really want to do. You want to create content with other people where you're tapping into a conversation that already exists. Now, how you do this in a way where it's not just you stealing someone else's audience is you really have to treat it like a true collaboration. So a great example of that is when you cross verticals. So maybe you as a gamer are collaborating with someone in entrepreneurship, and the lessons that you learned from gaming can be applied to entrepreneurship and vice versa. So it would be really cool to go outside of your genre or your niche and collaborate with someone and talk about the larger ideas that you wouldn't really get to talk about on your own or to that same level of depth. And at the same time, when you collaborate with someone outside of what you're used to, they're going to pose questions to you that you wouldn't think to ask yourself. And so when you do that, now you're opening your audience to more general people. They might be interested in that aspect of your content, and that's good. In some sense, you have to choose, do you want to grow vertically or horizontally? Do you want to be the specialist in your industry, or do you want to have access to a lot of different types of audiences and have people see you as a thought leader on a more general topic across the board? Either way, it's okay, and you can have a blend of both. But again, it comes back to being conscious of that and then creating that intentionally. But let's say you're first starting out and no one really wants to collaborate with you yet. Some really tactical things that you can do to get noticed and to start building your following if you're at zero is doing things that use the algorithm and the platform to your advantage. So for example, you have to think that whenever someone sees an ad for anything, it's awareness. You now know that that thing exists. Instead of taking a budget and running ads, you have to think of the things that you can do that operate in the same way as an ad does. A couple of those things are going to other videos within your niche and liking them, commenting on them, responding to them, engaging with them. Maybe finding a video you really liked on YouTube, go find that person on Twitter and tweet at them and say, I really liked your video, I thought it was really informative, etc. If you're on Instagram, search the hashtag that has to do with your niche and like 100, 200 photos in that, and do that every single day. Because you have to think that every time you like something or you comment on it, that person is going to get a notification on their phone or their computer that you engaged with them. And inherently, some percentage of those people are going to go to your pages, check you out, and some will follow. So this is what's called a conversion rate. If you put out 100 and you get back 10, you have a 10% conversion. So the more that you do that, the more that you can start generating traffic to your pages, and then people will convert and follow you. Another really great growth hack is taking things that are really popular and engaging with them, or in a sense, recreating them in your own voice. So if you see videos or photos or styles of content that perform really well, you want to try and create that same type of content yourself, because chances are if it's working for that person, it might work for you too. And it's a trial and error process. You have to figure out if your audience likes it, what that audience actually is, and if it works for you and your personal brand. But again, if it's working for someone else, there's a good chance it's going to work for you. And the last part of growth hacking is realizing that it all comes down to how much you're willing to hustle. It takes a lot of work. You have to reach out to people, you have to comment, you have to like, you have to engage and use the platform that you want to build an audience on. Wherever your audience is, there's a larger community there. And so if you want to get noticed, you have to be part of that community. You have to engage with them, you have to ask questions, you have to respond to questions. It's all about making your voice heard in the larger community so that people see you as a thought leader. And finally, the last thing that you should think about is how you can build credibility for yourself. Even if you're first starting out, it's really important to question and think, how can you be perceived as the thought leader in your niche or your market or your industry? Whether you're a content creator or a journalist or a curator, you want to find ways to position yourself as the thing that you ultimately want to be. Some really simple things are cleaning up your profile, making sure that your description clearly says, this is what I do, this is the value I provide. You want to have a clean banner image, you want to have a clean profile picture. You want to do things that are very, very in line with creating the image and the perception of what you want to be perceived as. Another really great thing you can do is reach out to other, say, blogs or things that bestow credibility. So a really great one is if you can get on someone's channel or someone's podcast or someone's blog, and then you can say featured on whatever that channel was. Now people inherently see you as, oh, well, you got featured somewhere, so you must know what you're talking about. So this is what I call trading up. How it works is you collaborate or you find some way to gain credibility on a very entry-level platform. So maybe you team up with another very entry-level YouTuber and you collaborate and create some sort of content. Once you have that, you want to ladder it up to something slightly bigger. Once you've cleaned up your profile and you know clearly the value that you want to provide people, then it's all about reaching out to other people and other places where you can gain credibility elsewhere. Because once you get one feature, you can ladder that feature up to something bigger and something bigger. So it's finding ways where people will see you as the thought leader within your niche. Once you have that, you can start trading it up to bigger and bigger things, right? Because if you say, I've been featured on this, or I created this, or I'm the one who interviewed this player, then that opens a new door of opportunity. And you just keep trading that up and up the ladder until you get to where you want to be. Growth hacking at the end of the day is just all about finding things that people do to grow and then replicating it yourself. So whether that means liking 100 different videos a day, or collaborating with other thought leaders, or getting featured in certain blogs so that you can put their logo on your channel or your website. Whatever it is, you want to find ways to help create the perception that you are the thought leader that you say you are. And so it's both creating the quality that attracts that audience in the first place, but then also finding things that validate that quality. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to take that social following that you've built and convert them and bring them over to your own personal website. The reason that there's so much value in this is that by having your own website, you can start to create your own products, and you can house your best content on a platform that you own. Your website is the last step. That's why it's more important to build the audience and attract attention on all of the social platforms, so that once you have the audience, you can convert them over to your own website. And once you bring them to your website, the whole goal is you want to capture their email. You want to be able to have direct access to them so that whenever you launch something new or you're doing something really cool, you can keep them in the loop without having to rely on whatever social platform you're using. Lesson 9, how to build an email list. The reason why having an email list is so valuable is because even if you have your audience on another platform, they have to go to your channel to know when you've posted something new. Whereas when you have an email list, what you can do is you can send it directly to them and say, hey, I just created this thing, or hey, I just put out this new video. By having direct access to your audience, you can keep them updated with whatever it is that you're working on. A lot of people underestimate the value of having an email list. And if you don't have one, you're reliant upon the social platform that you're using. So even though YouTube will send out emails and include videos in its newsletters or its own emails, you still don't have access to whether or not your audience sees it. And that's the whole thing. The whole goal is to build an audience on a free platform and then move them over to your website. This is where a lot of people go wrong, is they try and create the website first and build it and make it extravagant, thinking, all right, I'm gonna launch my personal brand, or I'm gonna have everybody come check out what I'm all about, without taking the time to build an audience elsewhere. Really, that's the whole benefit of building an audience on a social platform. You put out content and you get feedback, and that's where all of the lessons we were talking about, it's so that you can find your voice and you can figure out what content you're sharing. Once you have that, and once you have people paying attention to you, then you launch the website. Then you launch your blog. That's where you put the best content that you possibly can create, and also the content that doesn't fit on other platforms. So YouTube, it's, I know what videos I need to make for YouTube. Instagram, I know what photos I want to post on Instagram. But on your blog, maybe it's extended content or content that doesn't fit within the ways that certain social platforms work. Maybe you want to do a really long, comprehensive blog post picking apart a game, or picking apart a character, or even a specific element within your industry. So on your blog or your website, that's where you're going to post your highest quality content. Now, in order to build an email list, what you want to do is you want to take that content, that really, really great content, and take maybe 10–20% of it and give it away for free. So this might be a free download that someone can put in their email for, and in exchange, they'll get whatever it is that you're giving them. So let's say that you're a gamer and you want to break down the basics to a class in a certain game. You might put together a free guide explaining here are the different classes, here are how they work, here are their attributes, here's how you can attack or defend against them, and you create a little guide that's maybe a couple pages long, and you put it on your website, and someone can put in their email in exchange for downloading it. Where a lot of people go wrong is that they think about capturing emails in terms of just give me your email, right? They have a box or something on their website that just says, put in your email and I'll send you stuff. It's not specific enough. Instead, what you want to do is come up with what content you can pull together for free and give away in exchange for their email. You want to create this dynamic where what you're giving away is still valuable, but it's not quite the full story. Going back to what we were talking about with audience pain points, this is the content that people are willing to put in their email for so that they can download something of value. And then how it works is once someone puts in their email, it automatically gets added to a list. The whole goal is you want to build up this list of people that are essentially saying that they're interested in your content. So again, going back, what you want to do is look at all of the free stuff that you're putting out on social, look at the content that people are really gravitating to, and then format it and put it in a way that's digestible for them. So what if you took some of your best YouTube videos, looked at the different topics, and then said, okay, I'm going to put together a mini 10-page ebook that goes through all of these videos that performed really well, more in depth. Maybe you want to do some sort of tutorial or even just a guide for getting started on something very specific within your niche. If your game is League of Legends or World of Warcraft, you can put together an ebook that is very specific to solving a particular problem. If they're a beginner, advanced player, doesn't matter. The key is that you want to create something of value specific to your audience, and then you want to say, give me your email and I'll give it to you for free. The reason why people do this, and they do it willingly, is because you're providing them value. And that is very different than the sites where they just put a box that says, give me your email and I'll send you stuff. It's not enough and it's not worthwhile. Instead, you want to think about what you can give away for free that is good enough for them to say, yes, I will give you my email for it. And if you can do that, you end up building a list of people that are all essentially saying, I'm really interested in what you're giving me, and if you provide me even more value, I'm willing to listen. That's the real goal, is you want to have this list of people. These are your most loyal followers, your most loyal subscribers. So even if you have 100,000 people on your YouTube channel that are subscribing to your content, maybe only a small percent of them are really interested in everything that you do or a certain aspect of what you do. So that's where your email list is a much clearer representation of the people that are really on board with you. And if you can build that email list based on your subscriber base, then if you have 100,000 people on YouTube but an email list of 10,000, you now know to spend more time focusing on those 10,000 people because they're your real followers. They're the ones that are the most interested in whatever it is you're doing. And once you have that, you can start thinking about all of the ways that you can provide them the most value. You want to think about it like a constant ladder system. You have your free stuff, you have your different social platforms, and then you have your other free stuff on your site that's even better and still providing value, and it's still free. And then once you have that email list in place, that's when you can start monetizing. See, this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that once you have direct access to people, you can sell them things. And I know that that's a touchy subject, because whenever you say that you're selling something to people, it comes with this stigma like, oh, well, you're just trying to get me to buy something. But if you're providing someone real value, then you're not really selling them on anything. You're giving them the opportunity to derive even more value from you. So if you have something that they really need, of course, why not? If you're going to take the time to put it in a very easy to understand format and in a way that's actually going to help them get to where they want to be, and you're giving them all of this free content through your social platforms and your blog, why not that last 5% you monetize? Because that's going to allow you to spend more time creating more content that provides them with more value, and then you're going to be able to do what you love more often. This is that last part of the equation that a lot of people, either they don't want to have the conversation around it, or they're hesitant, or it goes back to this idea of, I'm not good enough, or why should someone pay for me to tell them? Who am I? but you become that thought leader as soon as you decide that you are that thought leader. And if you're giving away that much free content, and then you use that to collect your most valuable subscribers and you build that email list, now you know who you're really marketing to. Now you know who's most interested in what you're doing, and then you can start asking, okay, if they're consuming all of this free content of mine, what is that last 5% that is the best that I can possibly do? What is the thing that I can create that will provide this select group of people the most value and help them and solve some sort of pain point issue that they're facing? And then once you have that in mind, that's where you spend a lot of your time creating something very high quality. A lot of the social content and the free content on your site to collect emails, that's used almost as practice and used to build an audience over time. But then once you have that select group, now you know who it is you're talking to and really what it is they need, because you've done all the hard work of figuring out all of the things that they're interested in along the way. So the next lesson we're going to talk about, and the last lesson, is really how do you monetize? And again, a lot of gamers, unfortunately, in this industry, there are only 2 or 3 primary revenue sources for them. They have sponsorships by big brands, which are still great, and I think that they're an awesome way to drive revenue for themselves and do what they love. And then you have ads, if you're a YouTuber and you're running pre-roll ads on your channel. And then you have affiliate links. And this is where a player might sell someone else's product and get back 5, 10%, or maybe even lower. And if you do the math, that's not a lot of revenue. And so you have to ask yourself as a gamer, if you're attracting this much attention and you're attracting this many people that are paying attention to you, why are you selling someone else's stuff? Why aren't you creating your own stuff and your own things that are going to provide your own audience value? There's a lot of power in having people pay attention to you. And it's why brands and other people and people that give affiliate links, that's why they approach you in the first place, because you have something that they don't have. So yes, you can use these other sources as ways to drive revenue for yourself, but they're not going to be the primary. If you want to make a real living and a career doing what you love, then you need to start thinking about how you can build that email list and how you can take the attention that's on you and then create your own branded products. You already have your name, you already have your thought leadership established, so now what can you create that people go directly to you for? So instead of making 5 or 10% selling someone else's thing, you're now making 90, 100% on the thing that you create yourself. Lesson 10, monetizing your personal brand. This is a really difficult thing for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, because whenever you talk about money, there's always this stigma of either I'm not good enough, or who am I, or why should I be the one charging, or inherently there's this element of you feel like you're no longer doing it because you love it, just because you're making money off of it. But you need to realize that you making an income, providing value, allows you to provide more value. You need to think about it in that sort of sense, because if you're constantly doing something else that you don't enjoy to make a living and then doing this purely as just a hobby, that's fine. But then realize that it will always be a hobby. And if you're okay with that, that's great. But if you want to make it your primary and you want to use it as a way to drive income for yourself and ultimately become an entrepreneur or someone that's self-sustainable doing what it is that they love, then you need to start shifting the mindset around how can I provide so much free value that then my closed group of followers and subscribers are the ones that I sell and market to my highest value. So before we talk about the different ways to monetize, let's go back and talk about why having a personal brand is so valuable. So let's say that maybe you don't want to make money or make your personal brand your primary. Even still, if you want to get a job in today's market or you want to work for another company, who do you think that they're going to hire? Are they going to hire the kid that has a nice resume and got some good grades and, did okay in school, was in a couple clubs? Or are they going to hire the kid that says, I actually have 120,000 subscribers on YouTube and I put out daily content directly applicable to you, the company that I want to apply to? That level of knowledge and expertise and audience is so much more enticing and valuable to a company rather than the kid who just says, well, I was part of a couple school clubs. This direction is already shifting. It's not about resume padding anymore. It's not about what you've done. It's about what you're currently doing. So if you can walk into an interview or any sort of opportunity and say, this is what I'm doing right now. Go check out my channel, look at the content I put out, look at what my expertise is, then all of a sudden they're gonna see you as the thought leader and they're gonna want you as part of their team or their organization. It's so much more valuable than people realize, and it's not about money or it's not about becoming rich and famous. It's about doing what you love in whatever aspect that means. If you want to do it on your own or if you want to do it as part of a team or some sort of organization, it doesn't matter. Having a personal brand is what shows your value much clearer than a piece of paper that says this is my resume and this is what I've done. So let's say building a personal brand is what you want to be your primary. Maybe you want to be a full-time YouTuber or a streamer or content creator. Some ways to monetize that people don't really think about is taking what you're really good at and repackaging it in a way that is easily consumed by people. If you can take the content that you've already created and repackage it in a way that's very easy to digest, you're eliminating one of the hardest parts for people, which is they have to search through your content or they have to search the internet and try and piecemeal together what it is that they're looking for. Instead, again, think about what the pain point is, think about the one thing that someone wants to solve for, and then create a product or a digital download or something around that that directly answers that. Another thing that you can do is make it very, very in-depth. You can only go so in-depth in a video or a blog post, and maybe you have in the past gone really in-depth. If you have, then why not take all of those pieces, put them in one clean package and say, here, for $10, you can download this. The reason why it's $10 is because you yourself took your time, you created the content in the first place, you have your expertise, you have knowledge of the market and thought leadership in the market, you have a name, and you're making it easy to digest for them. You have to remember that your value is in taking what you know and delivering it in a way that's easy to digest. So if you're creating all this free content and you're creating better free content on your site and you're doing all of these things to teach people, then why not take that last little bit, repackage it in a way that is very, very easy for someone to digest. It's all right there in front of them and charge them a little bit for it. The reason why that's okay is because you've done so much free work already that you've established credibility. People see you as the thought leader, they trust you, they want to look to you for knowledge, and now you're just saying, look, I've done all of this for you, I've made it very easy to digest, you get it, you see me as the thought leader, now I want you to buy this last little bit so that you can get the most value. I want to make it very easy and I want to eliminate your time. See, that's what it's all about, is that instead of asking your audience to spend time, you want to remove the amount of time that they have to spend because that's adding value to your audience. If they don't have to take an hour or two looking through all of your content to get the one final answer they're looking for, and you've repackaged it and given it to them in exactly the way that they're going to understand it, then you should charge a little bit for it. Because not only are you adding value to their life, but you're also allowing yourself then to make money off of it so that you can spend more time focusing on creating even better content. That's really the goal. So a few ways to monetize that people don't think about are, one, creating digital products. Ebooks in particular, when you say ebook, I think people get caught up in this idea of, oh, I have to write a book. You don't have to be an author, you don't have to be a writer, and this is coming from a writer. It's not about writing a 200-page novel. It's about condensing your information in a way that makes it very easy for your audience to understand whatever it is that you want to teach them. An ebook can be 10 pages, it can be 30 pages, it can be 50 pages. What matters is that you deliver the value that they need in however long you need to deliver it. You can do it with visuals, you can make a very visual ebook, you can make it all text, whatever it is to communicate to them and teach them whatever it is that they want to know. And then offer it as a download on your site, charge a little bit for it, and now you have a way to monetize and they have exactly what they're looking for, exactly the way that they want it. So if you want to create an ebook series, a really great way to think about it is what game are you playing and what things do people want to learn about that game? Maybe you want to create an ebook series that covers all of the different classes. So you can package things in a very clear way that says, all right, I want to learn how to play this class, or I want to learn how to beat this boss, or I want to learn how to use this map to my advantage. Take that specific piece of content and create it into an ebook. And if you do so in a way that provides enough value, people are willing to pay for that because you've already established credibility through all of the free content that you're creating, and then you've established even more credibility through the also free content that you have on your site. So then that last little bit is about taking those pieces of content and packaging them in a way that is very easy for them to understand. Another great way to monetize is creating your own products. You can create your own keyboard if you wanted, or your own mouse, or t-shirts, merchandise. All of these are options, and if you have a brand name, you want to put your brand on it and sell it yourself. Instead of being an affiliate for someone else, you want to think about what can you create that will sell and provide value to your audience and still have your name on it, and you get to keep the majority of the revenue. Again, the whole goal with monetization isn't to sell someone else's stuff with your name, it's to sell your own stuff with your name on it. If you can do that, you're going to end up keeping more revenue for yourself, which will allow you to spend more time doing what you love, and you're going to establish credibility within your niche because you're the one providing the solution. When it comes to monetization, there's really not one right way to go about it. If you see other people monetizing in a way, even if it's outside of your industry, you can always ask yourself if you can take that idea and apply it to your own brand. Another way that people make money for themselves is they do one-on-one coaching or private lessons. A lot of gamers offer other aspiring gamers or new players private lessons so that they can learn how to become better. So that's one way you can monetize, by working with other players one-on-one, where again, you're still providing value, but you're valuing your time and you're saying, look, I'm willing to teach you and you just pay me by the hour. It's the same way tutoring works and classes in formal education works, but now you're applying it to your niche, your thought leadership, and you're still providing your audience with value. So again, you can sort of imagine this ladder system where you offer one-on-one coaching, maybe that's one way you monetize, and then another is you say, okay, maybe you can't afford the one-on-one coaching or you don't have time for it. Instead, you can purchase this digital product or this ebook where you can learn the same sorts of things that I would teach you one-on-one instead. You start to think about these different ways to monetize, and again, it always comes back to what value are you trying to provide in relation to what it is that they want to learn. If you can start thinking that way, you can look at the ways people monetize outside of your industry or your niche and then apply it to whatever it is that you're doing. So if you see someone doing something well and making money off of it in retail or in athletics or any other industry, question and see if you can apply it to your own personal brand. And if it works, test it out and see if people are receptive to it. And if not, then it's okay. But you should start thinking about what are the things that you can create on your own so that instead of selling someone else's stuff, you're selling your own.